gbnews.com.
£30,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours. It's our biggest cash prize of the year so far, and you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
You're joking. Really? Seriously, it's not a wind up, is it?
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. Like I said, I've never won anything like this.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon. Thank you.
For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello. Yes, this is Michelle Dewberry. Hello. Yes, it's 6 o'clock. And yes, it is indeed time for Dewbs & Co. I should have told you this earlier though, but I've decided that at 6 o'clock now, I'm going to down tools and I'm going to have quality family time instead. Son, how many times have I told you stop picking your nose? Sorry, what was I saying? Oh yeah, 6 o'clock, quality family time for me. From now on in. Love it. You again? Listen, no, you cannot convince me to do the show, because if it's good enough for the man who, let's face it, is probably going to be our Prime Minister this time next week, Sir Keir Starmer, then it's good enough for me to clock off at 6 o'clock as well. So you know what? Why don't you go and take a look at the news?
You're not working. Thanks very much indeed, Michelle. Well, let me update you with the latest news here from the GB Newsroom. And the top story is that a student nurse described as an incredibly dangerous man who intended to kill as many people as possible has been found guilty of preparing terrorist acts. Mohammed Farouk was arrested in Leeds with a pressure cooker bomb at the hospital where he worked in January last year. Sheffield Crown Court heard how an incredibly brave patient prevented utter devastation when he managed to talk him down. The 28-year-old self-radicalised Islamist terrorist had immersed himself in an extremist Islamist ideology and went to the hospital to seek his own martyrdom. Well, also in the news today, former nurse Lucy Letby has been found guilty of the attempted murder of another premature baby girl just 2 hours after she was born. The 34-year-old's already the UK's most prolific child killer and is serving 14 whole-life sentences for the murders of 7 babies and trying to kill 6 others. Originally, the jury couldn't reach a verdict on the allegation, but after a retrial, it was decided that Letby did deliberately dislodge a breathing tube from the little baby at the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2016. The family released a statement outside Manchester Crown Court this afternoon, thanking the jury for their patience and resilience and the medical professionals who had all given evidence. They also praised the investigation team and the prosecution team, saying they would be forever grateful for their work. 3 Leicestershire police officers are under investigation over how they dealt with alleged assaults by Nottingham killer Valdo Calacane in the weeks before he went on to kill 3 other people. 2 constables and a sergeant are said to have made inquiries into alleged assaults made by Calacane. But he then went on to kill students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar and caretaker Ian Coates. Barnaby Webber's brother Charlie spoke to GB News earlier about their close bond and the devastating impact of the death of his brother a year on from the attacks.
I remember I was on a school trip, and I remember sitting down on the side of the bus and my parents, or mum and dad, telling me that there's been an incident in Nottingham and Barney's been killed, and I remember the feeling, I can't really describe it, it's like you just feel very fuzzy, and I just broke down in tears and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I was getting overheated, and it's just, yeah, it's something you can't comprehend, is it?
Charlie Webber speaking there about his brother. Now, Royal Mail has hit back at claims there's been a failure to get postal votes sent out to some people in some areas, insisting there is no backlog ahead of the general election on Thursday. It comes after the Post Office Minister himself, Kevin Hollinrake, was said to be urgently investigating claims of delays in some constituencies. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is refusing to rule out recounts if some postal votes can't be counted.
Well, look, we cross each bridge as we get to it. I am concerned about the delays, and I think what needs to happen now is everybody needs to pull together to make sure the ballot papers get where they're needed so that people can exercise their democratic right to vote. So that's where my focus is at the moment.
Keir Starmer. Now, the chairman of Reform UK, Richard Tice, has accused the Conservative Party of placing a Trojan horse set of candidates to spread lies in the party. It comes after a second Reform candidate suspended her campaign and defected to the Tories. Georgie David accused the vast majority of candidates of being racist and, she said, misogynistic. But a Reform spokesman described her comments as sweeping and her actions as sad and strange. And just lastly, Royal Mint has honoured Team GB's Olympic and Paralympic athletes with a new 50p coin. It comes ahead of the Paris Games in just 24 days' time. The collectible, which has prices starting from £12, features athletes against a backdrop of the Union flag with a silhouette of the Eiffel Tower. The Royal Mint says they hope the coin serves as a special good luck token. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour with more news for you.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Panic over, everyone. I am here, really. I am Michelle Dewberry, and just for a brief moment, you might have thought I was scarving off because it was 6 o'clock, but no. I am a northerner, and I graft, and I've got a true work ethic. So here I am until 7 o'clock alongside with my panel, the entrepreneur and the Reform UK donor, Zia Youssef, and Lord Glassman, the Labour peer. Welcome to both of you. You're very welcome indeed, and you know the drill, don't you, on this programme? It is very much about you guys at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? There's a lot I want to discuss with you, everybody. Of course, I want to look at what the goings on with the defections when it comes to reform today. I want to look at, apparently, according to one poll, a high number of young black and Asian people are saying that they're going to leave the country. Why? What do you think is going on there? And I also want to ask you about newspaper endorsements. Do you think that they are worth now the paper, essentially, that they are written on when it comes to who they are going to back in this next general election? Or not. But if you're wondering what on earth I was talking about at the start of the programme, let's just remind ourselves, shall we, about what Keir Starmer has recently said.
So on a Friday, I've been doing this for years, I will not do a work-related thing after 6 o'clock. Pretty well come what may. Yeah.
I've got to say, of course, the Tories, you'd expect this, have been absolutely making hay with it. It's very quick off the mark with their social media responses to that. Let's have a little look at this. You can see this mock-up of a diary there. Well, you can see it if you've got a magnifying glass, quite frankly. But it goes on about it's factoring in a nap It's factoring in him knocking off early at 6 o'clock and so on and so forth. And I've really got to say that there's a lot of people really making hay with this today. Zia Youssef, you're a businessman and entrepreneur. What do you think to Keir Starmer, what he said about going home early, essentially, at 6 o'clock on a Friday?
I think ultimately, if you look at this objectively, what it actually just shows is poor judgment. More than anything else, to actually make that statement specifically about come what may and after 6 p.m. You know, if you're Prime Minister of this country, as it looks, odds on that he will be, the things that you would put in the come what may category for a British Prime Minister can be some very, very serious things. We obviously do have enemies out there. Listen, as somebody who has been an executive myself and as somebody who believes in reform, we do believe in family. I think executives, I think it is a good thing that they carve out some time in the week in order to spend time with family. I think this idea that you can work 24/7 for 5 years and make good executive decisions is obviously not the case. However, the real concern about this, I think, for me, is the lack of judgment in saying what he has said. And obviously, judgment is something that is incredibly important in a Prime Minister.
What do you think to it?
I think it's just about one of the best things he's ever said. I don't work on Friday afternoons myself. I'm Jewish, I observe the Sabbath. So I clock off at 4 in winter, in summer at around 6. I don't work on Saturdays. The Sabbath day is absolutely sacred to me. There's got to be a day a week you don't work, whoever you are. Sensible comment. And it's pathetic. The Conservatorial response is completely pathetic.
Maurice, come off it. You're not telling me that you're going to turn around, if you was to be the Prime Minister of this country, and you're going to turn around and say, whatever it was, you just said it's a Sabbath, so I'm not working, and all the rest of it. You wouldn't if there was a matter that needed your attention.
If there was. But the point is, what he's saying is he's not going to the usual completely meaningless cocktail party.
But to be fair, he did say come what may. And so while I agree with the sentiment, again, my view is that there should be some time carved out and he should try to manage that effectively as all executives do. But saying come what may, I think is a
talking for the Westminster side, there's this relentlessly false manic cycle of you've got to be working, but they're not working. They're just attending meaningless meetings. So I think good for him to say, there's an evening a week I'm going to be with my family. When he says come on me, it doesn't mean if there's a threat of a nuclear strike or something. You know, obviously, that's not what he's saying.
I think come what may, we should take it at face value, shouldn't we?
Yeah, come what may within reason, Zia. Just man up on that one. It's a good idea. And it's pro-family and it's pro-Sabbath, and I agree with it.
But, I mean, I found this interesting because there is this whole notion about what the world of work should perhaps look like going forward, because you've got a lot... the Labour Party will talk about the reform of the workers' rights. They'll do a 100-day... Well, not 100-day, but they'll do a consultation within the first 100 days with business, looking at how they can change things. I found it quite interesting in Greece. They seem to be going the other way. Their leader there is talking about mandating a 6-day working week, which is a complete opposite. But this whole notion that we should perhaps have more working from home, perhaps 4-day working weeks. Where are you on that one?
Look, my view is that we should allow people to make their own decisions and government should stay out of their way. Look, if people want to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day for a certain period of time because they're doing world-changing work and they feel really passionately about it, more power to them. That's their decision to make. If people want to clock up, do a job in which you have a 9 to 5 with a 1-hour lunch break and clock off at 5, and that's totally fine as well. I think legislating in one direction or the other, I think, is a very bad idea.
But then are we going to achieve growth? Because, of course, much of the Labour manifesto is predicated on achieving economic growth. Right. So on the one hand, if we're talking about lots more flexibility in the workplace, perhaps shorter working days or fewer working days or whatever, how will that achieve the economic growth?
I'm not into that. I'm saying Monday to Friday afternoon, that's when you do your work. But there's also a time for a day of rest. And one thing we've lost in the endless digital cycle and open all hours is we've lost the concept of a day a week where you don't work. That's absolutely vital. And that is an enhanced productivity, because if you're really tired, as you know, Michelle, sometimes your judgment gets a little bit wonky.
Is he trying to say I'm tired, everybody? Can't even respond to that. But what are you saying then? So you're saying that, yes, the ship sailed now, so Sunday used to be kind of essentially a chill-out day for many. Retail now really changed that. The same as, for example, Boxing Day. Now there's no rest for the wicked if you work in retail.
I've argued in Parliament for having Memorial Sunday as all the shops closed. You know, it doesn't necessarily enhance production to have a relentless cycle. Sometimes you've got to have a little bit of time off.
What What do you think to this notion then? Let's pick Sunday as the day. Do you think we should try to get back to a situation where we essentially have a day of rest, where things relax, close down?
I think that ship has sailed. I don't think history shows that things regress in that way. Again, though, let me be clear, we already have Saturdays and Sundays. The vast majority of working people in this country do have those days off. But there are people, like, for example, my own parents, you know, to put me through school, both of them worked, you know, sometimes 6-7 days a week. And again, I'm very grateful for them that they did that. I know across this country there are people who do that. That's not for everybody. Some people want to be gig workers. Some people want part-time work. Again, my view is government should stay out of those decisions. Those are ultimately conversations between employers and employees.
I
don't know so much.
I have a question mark in my mind about how honest Keir Starmer actually is. Because you can, or one can kind of just dismiss this Friday 6 o'clock thing and just be like, oh, whatever, or, you know, high five, let's all have more work time. But he said, you know, 6 o'clock on a Friday, and he's been doing this for years, I quote everybody, I will not do a work-related thing after 6 o'clock, pretty well, come what may. There are a few exceptions, but that's what we do. But let me remind everybody of this footage that perhaps some of you might be familiar with. Do you remember this? Remember this? Hashtag Beergate? Because this footage was filmed through the window. Do you remember it was about the time when everyone was kicking off about Partygate? This was in Durham, where Keir Starmer was filmed through the window having beer. He reckoned that was a work meeting and therefore no rules were broken and so on and so forth. But get this, everybody, that was the 30th of April 2021. What day was it, everybody? Friday. What time was it, everybody? 9 p.m. So then it makes me feel a little bit, there's something here that's not stacking up for me.
Yeah, well, there's two issues going on there, Michelle, before you get too deeply suspicious of all this. The first is Durham is away from home. This is Durham. I believe he
What's that got to do with
lives
the price of fish? He's just said he doesn't work on a Friday night.
Look, the whole point of him not working after 6 is that that's the time he goes home and actually has a meal with his family. That's his absolutely fundamental
He says,
point.
I will not do a work-related thing after 6 o'clock, pretty much, come what may. But when he was trying to get off the hook, when people were accusing him of potentially breaching rules, he was rock-solid adamant that that was a work event.
Yeah.
So both things can't be true. You can't on one hand tell everyone that you don't work after 6 o'clock on a Friday and then simultaneously be insisting to the nation that that was a work event at 9 o'clock on a Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is there are, of all of the things to take issue with Keir Starmer, I think Sir Keir Starmer's policies would be extremely bad for Britain, and this is a man who has 180'd on pretty much every major policy in the last 4 years and has said the only reason he supported Jeremy Corbyn was because he knew he was going to lose. So I think that point about integrity and what Keir Starmer actually stands for, I think that is actually the salient point here.
Yeah, and that is what is going round in my head, because whoever gets elected, whoever becomes the Prime Minister, I think people have had enough now of being messed around, being disregarded, disrespected by the political elite. They want people with integrity that mean what they say and say what they mean. And that there's no confusion or, you know, conflict.
So let me restate, Michelle, if you're really going to insist on this.
I am.
Well, I think you missed. So, you know, as I said, I also don't work on Friday nights and I don't work on Saturdays. But when I'm out of town, when I'm, you know, Maine kissed a buyer from out of town and that kiss burnt Chicago down, you know, when I'm out of town on work, I do work on Fridays, on Friday nights. So I think it says when I'm at number 10 and it's Friday, on the whole, I'm going to be going home at 6. I don't think it's a big deal.
What do you think to it? Am I making a big deal of it? Anyone that's got my concerns, shall we say? Are we just barking up the wrong tree? There was another thing as well that caught my eye that Sir Keir seems to be flip-flopping around on. This whole, what I would call the woman's issue, about if you're an individual like me who happens to believe in the reality of biological sex, I don't believe that a man can just chuck a dress on, give himself different pronouns and then live life as a woman. That doesn't wash with me. And Keir Starmer's position on this has flip-flopped all over the place.
Yeah, well, you're talking to me here, Michelle, and you know what my view is on this. You know,
well, the viewers don't.
OK, so my nan is not a man. You know, that summarises my view on this. I don't have any time for any of that. And, you know, they're a diddle-a-do, but I think it's come on the whole right now to say, yeah, there's a man and a woman, they are distinct things, and they shouldn't, it doesn't wash with you, that they shouldn't have a washroom.
Flip-flopping all over the place, and it's all about trying to get votes in these last kind of 48 hours or so, shore up as many votes as you can.
Labour is not, Michelle, at this moment, you know, hunting down every single vote. We're doing very well. I think we've got to a position now that's at last sensible. There's been a big, big argument about this within the party. But right now, we've come out in favour of there is a distinction between a man and a woman.
I disagree if you look at some of the radio shows that his shadow cabinet have done. I mean, they're some of the most extraordinary, excruciating minutes of radio to listen to as Nick Ferrari sort of asks about which bathroom somebody needs to use. Like really, really basic questions that, frankly, anyone with integrity should be able to answer very quickly. And I would put it to you that you would answer extremely quickly. So I think what, again, as Michelle said, what this comes down to is integrity, is what do you actually believe in? If you can't talk about these things candidly and frankly, if you can't have conviction about something as basic as biological sex, really, it's very difficult to see how you can expect a sensible form of government once Labour are in power.
Yeah, integrity matters to me, and I know it matters to a lot of you at home. And this simple issue about men being allowed into women-only single-sex spaces, I know that's a massive one for you. Keir Starmer's now said, when asked whether or not biological males with gender recognition certificates, do they have the right to enter women-only spaces, a simple yes or no. Keir Starmer apparently said, no, they don't have that right, they shouldn't. That's why I've always said the biological women's spaces need to be protected. Come off it, Keir Starmer. You're flip-flopping around like I don't know what. And you're quite right, it isn't just him. It wasn't that long ago that David Lammy was trying to convince us all that a man could actually grow a cervix. I mean, goodness gracious me, everybody.
Wow.
Let's talk after the break, shall we, about the goings-on there in the Reform camp, because now we've had a second Reform UK candidate defect to the Tories. What do you reckon that means, if anything, for the Reform UK campaign? See you in 2.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
The Royal Academy's annual exhibition has returned for the 256th time to Brighton the summer holidays. It's the world's oldest open submission exhibition. Anyone can enter work to be considered for inclusion. I'm joined now by art critic JJ Charlesworth for his verdict. What is your verdict?
My verdict is you should go and see it. You are confronted with many things of varying quality, selected by artists, and you very much, instead of being given something to you that's supposed to be good, you have to make your own decision.
I went along yesterday, and I personally did see some pictures on the wall that I thought were absolutely stunning. I'm going to mention Peter Ucker, which I think is a remark. And now these are the two by Ben Jonson, Grundtvig 1, and we've got one coming out of Berlin Pool. I think that's an absolutely stunning piece of work. And then Claire Douglas should be up. Here we are, Claire Douglas.
Yes.
Souvenir from the Anthropocene.
Yeah.
That last one, actually, a very witty painting.
A piece like that was really interesting. I think it caught a lot of people's eye because it had very kind of humorous, slightly bleak take on post-Brexit Britain. It's set in this fictitious world of Brummington, which is a sort of loose satire on Birmingham. I thought it was a bit mean.
I think we had maybe Black Lives Matter. We had Boris Johnson. I think our own Jacob Rees-Mogg made his way into the painting.
Yeah, so there's definitely a slant, a political slant, on the part of the artist. But even that said, I thought it was an interesting and enjoyable work, even though maybe you don't agree with the artist on what they're trying to say. And I think that actually made for an interesting moment because you're seeing that people are disagreeing, right? Both through the artwork and in front of artworks.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight, alongside with the entrepreneur and Reform UK donor Zia Youssef and the Labour peer, Lord Maurice Glassman. You'll all be pleased to know, because so many of you wrote in and said, please, can you tell Lord Glassman to stop swinging in his chair? I've told you, haven't I?
You've told me.
He's promised not to do it again, and if he does do it again, I've told him I'm going to super glue his feet to the floor. So there you go. Don't say we don't listen to the viewers here on GB News. Look, let's talk Reform UK, shall we? Because a second candidate now has defected to the Conservatives, saying, and I quote, the vast majority of party nominees are racist, misogynistic and bigoted. That's Georgie David. She was standing in West Ham and Beckton. You know, I've got to say, in fact, actually, let me just look at what Nigel Farage actually responded, because Nigel Farage has obviously issued a statement in response. In fact, actually, I'll come back to that in a second. Let me ask you first here, because Nigel's not sitting here. You are a donor to Reform UK. What do you think to this?
I'm just really disappointed at the total lack of any sort of scrutiny or deductive capability that most media seem to have about this claim. So if you just look at it objectively, this is somebody who was a Tory, came over and said, you know, they want to run for Reform and was selected. This person has claimed, and I'm quoting the candidate, that, quote, the vast majority of Reform candidates are these slurs. If you just assess that claim on its objectively on its merits, Reform have 611 candidates. This person has been supposedly campaigning in a constituency, as have those other 611 candidates in constituencies across the country. Nominations closed on June the 7th, which means that it's been 25 days. The vast majority of 611, let's call it 500. So in order to make such a serious allegation and slur against that many people, she would have needed to meet them, obviously. That would have meant she would have needed to meet 20 of those candidates every single day. And again, that is just objective reasoning of that statement. That is obviously impossible. And so the fact that this claim has been plastered all over, you know, it's the top of the BBC website, news website all day today, been really all over the media without any form of scrutiny. I mean, it's just absurd on its face.
And I mean, she's basically saying that she doesn't actually think that the management, the senior people within the parties are the things that she's just mentioned. But she also then went on to say that she doesn't think that the likes of Nigel Farage has taken it seriously. So let's just have a little look at a statement put out in response from Reform UK. They say the following, and I'll directly quote, "We strongly disagree with her sweeping statements about the vast majority of our 600+ candidates, the vast majority of whom she can never even have met, and we found it sad and strange that she chose not to bring up any of our concerns with the party leadership before publicly trashing so many of her blameless colleagues who are giving their all to get Reform UK elected." So what do you think is going on then?
Well, look, I mean, you can draw your own conclusions. I don't even need to comment. It's really clear that, look, the timing of this, as I said, to make such serious allegations about so many people. By the way, I've had so many conversations in the last few weeks with Reform candidates. I've been universally actually really impressed with them. Those words, they are the opposite of those things. So I think, frankly, it's quite clear that there's some kind of ulterior motive at play.
Well, let's have a look at what Rishi Sunak has had to say, because, of course, he was quick off the blocks as well. Listen.
These candidates who are coming over to Conservatives know is that a vote for Reform is just a vote to put Keir Starmer in number 10. And if you want your taxes cut, if you want your pension protected, and if you want our border secure, the only way to deliver that is to vote for Conservative candidates. You know, what we have seen is candidates and campaigners openly espousing racist and misogynistic views, seemingly without challenge, and that tells you something about the culture within the Reform Party overall. That's questions for Nigel Farage.
I'll come back to you in a second, because I want to ask about that statement there, where essentially a vote for Reform is essentially a vote for Labour. But before I do that, your thoughts on it all?
Oh, my thoughts, though, if somebody at this moment in time defects from Reform to the Conservative Party, you've got to question their judgment and their sanity. I mean, we're going to see the slaughter of the Conservative Party on Thursday. It's a party without a future. It's a party that's in a complete mess. And my issue is, Zia, much more is why Reform isn't doing better as an insurgent party. If what you say about Labour is true, that it's superficial and it doesn't generate enthusiasm and Starmer can't be trusted, why aren't you doing better?
Because Reform, in the grand scheme of the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, have been around in the blink of an eye. And I actually think the momentum, the trajectory and momentum of Reform support has been nothing short of, actually, I would say, unprecedented. In,
well, there was the Brexit Party in 2019, there was the Euro elections. Before that, but I remember the Brexit Party as a real force. I mean, a real force.
Well, Nigel Farage only, 3 weeks ago, wasn't even in the fray. You know, since he's returned, so Reform are polling at 4% in October 2022. They're now, 15, 20%, depending on the poll, so almost a fifth of the country. The enthusiasm that this party has, the rally for Reform at the NEC in Birmingham. I mean, the 5,000 tickets sold in the space of 3 days. I defy any political party or political leader in the United Kingdom to be able to do that. I don't think, honestly, Sir Keir Starmer would be able to do that with 3 months' notice. So we have the generational talent in the form of Nigel Farage as a leader. We have huge momentum. The other really important point to be made is just how little infrastructure Reform currently has. You know, they don't have this big ground game that the Conservatives, Labour and also the Lib Dems have. They don't have the local reputation of the MPs and candidates that the Lib Dems obviously very strong in. If you look at what they could do with those factors, and by the way, that is exactly what is coming, make no mistake, post-election day, I think what Reform are set up to do now is very much what, if you look at the numbers for Le Pen, she's gone from 18 to 36%. Again, Reform are a very different part. Nigel Farage is by no means Marine Le Pen, but I just want to be clear, if you look at what Le Pen has done from an electoral perspective, 18 to 36% in the space of 2 years. I think over the next, over this period of government, we're going to be able to charter a course to install Nigel Farage as Prime Minister in 2029.
What are you expecting them to be at then? If you don't think 15 to 20%, let's split the difference, 17.5%. If you don't think that's good, what would you expect to see them at?
Well, I would be expecting Reform. Actually, it's not really, it's affecting the Conservative vote a great deal, but it's not really digging into the Labour vote at all. I mean, I'm just looking at what we're finding. So, I mean, I would be expecting Reform to get 20 MPs, but they're not going to.
Well, look, the number of seats, that's very difficult to assess because of our first past.
I'm just making that prediction. You probably will get 2.
Yeah, but hang on, but what is that a result of? Is it because there's not enough appetite for reform, or is that because of a political system that we have in this country? Because there's two different things.
It's a combination of both, but that's the system we've got, and I just don't feel the energy of that insurgency.
I could not agree more. And anyone who was at that rally again on Sunday, which I think is a very good litmus test, and we've seen in America how that has been a very good litmus test and predictor of turnout and of momentum generally. The number of people who have reached out to me, by the way, including privately, including people I've never have guessed in sort of former friends, friends of mine, for example, who have said, I support reform, which I wouldn't have guessed. And obviously, an enormous number of people whom I don't know reaching out to say what Reform are doing is giving us hope. And I think that that's why the message is resonating so much.
Do you think you're going to replace the Conservatives as the force on the right?
Well, look, this country needs a proper centre-right party. The Conservatives stopped being that a very long time ago. And so what Reform are going to be focused on is maximising the outcome on this election, getting a beachhead in Parliament. But make no mistake, this is just the beginning. We are laser focused on building out that infrastructure, building up our resources and making Nigel Farage Prime Minister in 2029.
Because we're such a strange country, Michelle. All over Europe, everything's swinging to the right. And Britain, centre-left.
I would actually disagree with that statement, only because the Conservative Party have not governed as a right-wing party. And so actually, the point about Labour, which is well accepted, you know, I think clearly Sir Keir Starmer is going to be the Prime Minister. But that isn't because the country has been massively convinced about his policies. It's because there's been going to be a total repudiation of the Conservative Party. The traditional Conservative voters have been utterly betrayed. Utterly betrayed. That's the word that comes up a lot, and betrayal is a very, very powerful
And would you consider yourself a Conservative?
My political views are centre-right, and I think that the Conservative Party...
I don't know what that means. Are you a Conservative?
I'm Conservative with a simple C.
With a small c?
Yes.
Yes, so am I, but, I mean, do you believe in tradition and the preservation of traditional ways of life and those sort of things?
Well, it depends...
Are you a market guy?
It depends
or
on...
are you a liberal, really?
Look, I think... The reality is we are in the 21st century, right? The world is changing very, very quickly. The idea that we can just bring back the 1950s is fanciful. However, what reform does stand for are values, right? And values are timeless, you know, and the British values that I feel extremely passionately about that need to be defended: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, equality before the law. These are things, actually, I would argue that Labour are going to put at risk. I think the Conservatives have just governed totally incompetently, betrayed those values that we care so deeply about. So we need a proper Conservative with a simple C party in this country. We need a proper centre-right party in this country, and that is what Reform are offering.
And do you know, when you said that you thought that would perhaps be doing better, I find it absolutely staggering what I would perceive to be bias around the media reporting when it comes to the way that Reform UK is treated, reported on, versus other parties. Like, for example, we'll all be familiar with the fact that Channel 4 News went undercover to canvass with Reform UK. Did they go undercover to canvass with any other party?
No.
Not that I've seen. Perhaps I've missed it. I don't think I did miss it. You know, I'm not going to mention the constituency, otherwise I'll be here all day reading out the candidate list. But there's one particular Labour candidate in a very high-profile seat who turned around and said, and I directly quote, his favourite drink is white men's tears, and that he says that he's standing for black and brown people.
And he is actually still the candidate, to be clear.
He is. And if that was anybody on the Reform UK side of the fence, all hell would have broken loose. But because it's on the Labour side of the fence, people completely ignore it. You've got people trawling back decades through people that have put their head above the parapet to stand for Reform UK. I do not see that same level of scrutiny for the other candidates. To me, there's a smell of desperation from many in the media and beyond, actually, when it comes to trying to diminish and undermine and tarnish Reform UK. And I would argue, I would put it to you, that if Reform UK, you said that you don't feel a sense of energy about them, well, if there wasn't this sense of energy, if there wasn't this looming threat, people wouldn't be investing that amount of time trying to discredit them.
Yeah, well, we're going to get on to the media, aren't we, and whether newspapers matter at the further point in the programme. I don't think, you know, just a spoiler alert, I don't think they do matter that much. I think that people make their own minds up. What I'm saying more is that I'm very alert to the space that you wish to fill, and I think that there is a space to fill. There is a disillusionment with mainstream politics and people looking... I just don't know if you offer that vision.
Well, I can tell you now, when it comes to election day, the person that will decide who brings what vision is you guys. When you get into your voting booths, you put your cross, do you know where you're going to put it yet? Are things still changing your mind or not? What do you make to it all? Lots of you are getting in touch saying, can you stop repeating this myth that a vote for Reform is a vote for Labour? Many people are saying if they vote Reform, they are doing it because they want to vote for Reform.
Can I just make the point?
Very quickly.
So that if you actually look at the betting markets now, the betting markets have it more likely that Reform will form a government than Conservatives, to be clear. And the betting markets, I think, are a much better assessor of this.
But that's just a comment about the Conservatives have no chance.
Well, look, rules are rules, and I did just mention one of the candidates for West Ham and Beckton. Strap yourselves in, because now I've got to tell you all the rest of them. Are you ready? Well, Emily Bigland from the Lib Dems, Lois Austin from Trade Unionists and Socialists Coalition, Holly Alice Ramsey from the Tories, Georgie David, as we've just been discussing, on the ballot as Reform UK, James Edward Assar from the Labour Party, Rob Callender from the Green Party, Sophie Nakavi from the New Independence Party, Coyote Shidawu from Christian People's Alliance. There you go. Coming up after the break, a new poll is out saying that 1 in 7 young black and Asian Britons are apparently going to ditch the UK due to government failings, and you guessed it, racism and, of course, economic worries. What do you think to all of that? I'll see you in 2.
Good evening. I'm here with your GB News weather forecast, brought to you by the Met Office. It's not feeling all that much like July at the moment. Yes, there has been some sunshine around today, but temperatures have actually been around or a little bit below average for the time of year, and it is going to turn increasingly cloudy and wet as we go through tonight because of a system that's pushing its way southwards. Yes, there may be some clear skies to start the night in the south, but here it's going to turn very cloudy, and everywhere we are going to see a lot of cloud and then that rain pushing its way in. Some of that rain heavy across some parts of northern England. The cloud, the rain, and for some of us some blustery winds means temperatures are going to stay up, most places holding up in double figures. Bit of a soggy start then for many of us tomorrow morning. There could still be some heavy bursts of rain around, though most of that is going to clear away towards the east quite quickly. And in fact, by the time we get to 7 o'clock in the morning, across some central southern parts of England, there could be some drier, brighter weather around. A bit cloudier further north across other parts of England and Wales. And in fact, across parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland, we're going to see another band of rain pushing its way in. This rain could be quite persistent, though not especially heavy. A little bit drier first thing across eastern parts of Scotland, perhaps northeast England, but this band affecting western Scotland and Northern Ireland is gradually going to make its way east and southeastwards as we go through the day. So more places over northern England, Wales, southwest England perhaps turning damp again as we go through the afternoon. Elsewhere there will be some drier weather around, cloudier towards the east, brighter skies towards the northwest with some showers mixed in, and temperatures still a little bit below average for the time of year, just about getting to the low 20s. On Thursday there's going to be a bit of a north-south split. In the north we can expect some blustery winds and some fairly frequent showers. Some of these could be on the heavy side. Further south though, across many central southern parts of England and Wales, it's actually looking largely dry and lighter winds here too, with plenty of sunshine. By Friday though, more of us are likely to see some wet and windy weather. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, my name is Johnny Ratner. The M18 in South Yorkshire remains blocked southbound from junction 4 to 3 near to Doncaster after a lorry was on fire. Long queues back to the M180. And also in South Yorkshire, the Attercliffe Road remains shut through Sheffield and the scene of a crash off Worksop Road that happened this afternoon. On the M42 in the West Midlands, 2 lanes are out of action northbound at junction 5. The Solihull bypass where a car's broken down, queues back to 4 the Shirley-Dorridge exit. Northamptonshire south of Frapston, the A45 is closed off the A14 for a police investigation. North London, the A10 is closed at the Dalston Junction. That's for accident investigation work. And Northumberland Avenue in central London still closed at the scene of an accident outside Great Scotland Yard. A very limited service on London trams as well again today for the strike action this week. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello everybody, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you until 7 o'clock tonight. So alongside me, my panel remain. We've got the entrepreneur and Reform UK Derna Zia Youssef and the Labour peer Lord Maurice Glassman. Lots of conversation there. I'm really interested to know your thoughts on that. There's really mixed views in terms of what you think is going on when it comes to the defections. I'm particularly interested to hear your opinions in terms of the media coverage. Do you think that all parties have been subjected to the same scrutiny, or do you suspect, as I do, that there's perhaps a little bit of bias going on, to put that mildly? Give me your thoughts on that. Look, 1 in 7 young Black and Asian Britons apparently are planning to ditch the UK due to government failings, racism and economic worries. Of course, many people then are flagging and saying, what on earth, if that happened, would that have as an impact on the economy? What do you make to it all? Sia?
Well, look, I don't know why there's this obsession about people's skin colour. I don't know why this research had to be about ethnic minorities, for example. I actually think, if you actually look into the detail of the study and the survey, the concerns that these young people are raising are actually universal amongst young people, and I deeply sympathise with them. You know, they bring up cost of living, completely understandable. They bring up the total lack of affordable housing. Almost a third of our young adults under 30 years old still live at home with their parents. Not only is buying a home a pipe dream, they can't even rent anymore, and this problem is not getting better, it is getting worse. They talk about healthcare. 19,000 people had to wait 3 days in accident and emergency last year in this country. So I totally understand the anxieties that these young people have. I do genuinely think that they are being betrayed. They're just being robbed of a fair opportunity. People like to label our young people as entitled and all this stuff. They have no opportunity. They simply are not being given the same fair chance that older generations were given. So I don't think it's actually got anything to do with, or let me put it this way, if you included white people in there, which I think they should have done, you would have gotten a very, very similar result, this sense of despondency. And again, that's what Reform are offering young people. It is offering them hope.
And it just seems to be quite popular among the young. But what do you make to this survey? Will we see a mass exodus, do you reckon?
Well, no chance. And I completely agree with what you just said. But we've got to talk about our country. I mean, in Europe, which is swinging madly right, I mean, this is the least racist country in Europe. That's not, this country is a marvel when it comes to accepting people and doing the right thing by them. And I've heard this all my life. If the Conservatives win, we'll leave the country. If Labour wins, we'll leave. No, I don't take this seriously at all.
Do you see... You say that we're absolutely, essentially not a racist country, which I agree with, by the way.
Oh. We've found something, Michelle. This is
well done. But then one of the challenges and one of the issues that many people have in society is that when you're white, you're essentially often made to feel like, essentially, you're like the devil. You've constantly got it smacked over your head that you're languishing in this bath of white privilege, that you somehow have to repeatedly say sorry for the horrendous acts of your ancestors from God knows how many hundreds of years ago that you've never even met, probably know absolutely nothing about. And that you're constantly having to apologise over and over again. I mean, 19% of the people in this survey say that racial inequality is a factor in what they feel. So, I mean, for some people, obviously, this is still an issue. But I do know that many white people will say that they feel a little bit fed up of being battered over the head and bashed over the head because they've got the audacity to have white skin.
Yeah, well, I don't know what circles you mix in, but, that's not... that's a very Guardian kind of Channel 4 kind of way of looking at it. I thought it was on GBNews where we had a more open discussion.
What's a Guardian way of looking at it?
Oh, white colonial guilt and all of that. I'm just saying that we've got to look at the incredible thing about our country, which is that there is an incredible degree of acceptance of each other and civic peace in our country.
Absolutely, but why isn't that not more celebrated then?
We'll celebrate it now.
Well, there's identitarians.
Celebrate, but I've got my microphone and I work.
Well, there are identitarians who do love to slice and dice people, and young people are, frankly, in many cases, being indoctrinated with this idea that, because if you have a certain colour of skin, you're an oppressor, and if you have a different colour of skin, you're oppressed. And if you tell people that at a young age, then that inevitably some of them will start to believe it. Now, the good news is I do think young people are starting to rebel against that. I see, for example, if you look at what Reform have been saying, we believe in being colourblind. We believe in the beliefs of Martin Luther King, for example, judge people not by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character. And if you look at what's happening, for example, with young men, I think Reform are now are leading, and I think they're second with young women. So the good news is I think young people are starting to wake up and rebel against this, but I think it's a very insidious and dangerous thing to slice and dice our young people by their skin colour, and it is happening. People are being indoctrinated.
They certainly are. What do you think to it at home? Get in touch and let me know your thoughts. I want to ask you then about the media, because we've seen the Sunday Times, they came out at the weekend and they endorsed the Labour Party for the first time since 2005. Did you read their column on it? I can tell you now, it was really quite damning, actually. But do you think actually any of this means anything now? Does it matter? It used to make or break elections, some would say. What say you?
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
So, question is, what can we do to get young people to eat healthy food? Here's dietitian and nutrition consultant Helen Bond. Helen, what do you think?
Eating habits formed at this age tend to persist into later life. We know we're eating too much fat, sugar, salt, and not enough of the good things like fibre, fruits and vegetables, all of those things. So yes, we need to help this age group so they have the skill set and they have the nutrition knowledge to take that forward.
Do you agree that it is impossible to eat healthily on a budget and quickly as well, or do you have any sort of fail-safe, affordable and very quick to prep meals that you'd recommend youngsters try?
It doesn't have to be expensive either, but you have to have those kind of cost-cutting hacks and those time-saving things in the kitchen. Make use, I always say, of things like peas, beans and lentils, which are a type of pulse, very inexpensive compared to meat, and yet they double up as one of your 5 a day, and also a great source of plant-based protein. If you overget milk as something, you have too much milk, maybe make some lattes.
I just wanted to throw a shoe at the TV, really, because was there nothing else on or nothing else available? The point being, there is an audience, there is obviously an appeal, there's obviously people are watching this stuff. So what are they doing? Are they watching and not cooking?
I think that's it. They're watching and maybe enjoying all the cookery programs like I do. And I'm a typical person in the kitchen. I must have about 100 cookbooks. But sometimes when you are time poor, you've got to feed a family or you've got to feed yourself and everything, you don't really know where to start. And I think that's why apps and having things online for this younger audience makes it much more accessible. Start with one recipe and build it up from there. Like I said,
The People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This election night, we're putting on a party.
And you are invited.
We'll be here with you.
Following all the twists and turns.
As well as all the live reaction from our election night watch party.
With our GB News lineup.
And as morning breaks, we'll be here with breakfast from 6 a.m.
As it becomes clear who the winners and the losers really are.
Vote 2024.
Thursday, the 4th of July.
Only on GB News.
Britain's election channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you until 7 o'clock tonight. My panel remain alongside me, Zia Youssef and Lord Glassman. Now, let's talk about the media, shall we? Because lots used to be made of the endorsements of newspapers. Which way were they going to lean? You might remember headlines from the likes of The Sun coming out and saying it was The Sun what won it, so on and so forth. And interestingly, at the weekend, the Sunday Times, they endorsed the Labour Party. Lots of people talking about who the Sun perhaps will go with this year. Let me ask you this, though. Do you think all of this matters as much as it perhaps once did? I mean, we live in this digital age, TikTok, social media, so on and so forth. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you said earlier that our newspaper's worth the paper they're printed on. I would say that they're not even worth the paper they're not printed on at the moment, because most people read online. There's a much more diverse and segregated almost media. So newspapers have also declined in their quality and their coherence. So I think they matter a huge amount less.
Do they matter to you? So as someone who wants to make a financial contribution or donation, whatever you call it, to a political party, you will sit there and think, right, which party's most aligned with me, blah, blah. So when you see, for example, the Financial Times, they endorsed Labour, Sunday Times, we just spoke about that, Labour as well, Guardian, Labour, so on and so forth. Does that bother you or not?
No, it's not a factor in my decision-making at all. Look, I think it might be of some interest and intrigue to the commentariat in politics. I can't think of a single person I've spoken to over the last few years who, frankly, would even be... If you asked a quick straw poll right now of the general public and asked them to say which of these papers had endorsed which party, I think you'd struggle to be able to get any of them to do that. And to that point about social media, one of the things that I think is an under-talked about phenomenon in this election, this is the first major British election during which Elon Musk owns X, formerly known as Twitter. And we have seen in America, somebody pays quite close attention to American politics. This has been a very important factor because obviously, look, the media have an important role to play, and I hope they can play a better role in the future than they have thus far. However, obviously, there's a lot of independent journalists out there. There's a lot of people in the general public actually being able to upload things and share opinions. So when there are media reports that are patently biased, they are actually able to be corrected and the real story being getting out there much more effectively without the kind of censorious attitude that you had with the old Twitter management. So it has been a clear and decisive factor in why, for example, the betting markets now have Donald Trump as overwhelming favourite for the presidential election. I think it is going to be helpful, again, for the centre-right here as well.
I never thought that before, Zia, that Elon Musk taking over X has given Labour a better opportunity of winning, but I think that's right.
Well, I had my account restricted on X, I would say, for about a year.
When?
I had to get in touch recently.
Oh.
Yeah, recently. I've only just got it undone again. I wonder how much, whether or not social media plays a role in terms of, because the whole amount of this is, what will people think of me if I vote this way, if I vote that way? Do I need to vote a certain way because all my mates are voting that way, whatever party that is? And I just wonder, when you look at social media and everyone's got these hashtags, hashtag Tory out, or they've got hashtag Labour whatever, or hashtag reform, and it's like they're trying to very publicly declare, I'm in this gang. And I just wonder if you think that's helpful or a hindrance.
Well, probably, I don't like it. I've never tweeted in my life. I think that the whole Twitter world is a kind of cesspit of narcissistic hate. And Michelle, you've been on the receiving end of that, so you know what I'm talking about. But also there's YouTube, and what I find is, with my children, for example, they look at quite a lot of documentaries on YouTube and that sort of stuff.
Do you make to it? How much time do you spend on social media? And when you see stuff, how much is that influencing your potential when it comes to changing your mind? I'm really interested as to whether or not your minds are absolutely resolutely made up, or whether or not you're still there for the taking. Are you still undecided, ripe for the picking from whoever it is that can catch your attention? Anyway, look, I've enjoyed your company tonight, and gentlemen, yours too. Don't go anywhere, though, because, of course, up next, it's Camilla Tomlin, the award winner. But that's all from me, and I will see you tomorrow. Night.
Good night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. I'm here with your GB News weather forecast, brought to you by the Met Office. It's not feeling all that much like July at the moment. Yes, there has been some sunshine around today, but temperatures have actually been around or a little bit below average for the time of year, and it is going to turn increasingly cloudy and wet as we go through tonight because of a system that's pushing its way southwards. Yes, there may be some clear skies to start the night in the south, but here it's going to turn very cloudy, and everywhere we are going to see a lot of cloud and then that rain pushing its way in. Some of that rain heavy across some parts of northern England. The cloud, the rain, and for some of us some blustery winds means temperatures are going to stay up, most places holding up in double figures. Bit of a soggy start then for many of us tomorrow morning. There could still be some heavy bursts of rain around, though most of that is going to clear away towards the east quite quickly. And in fact, by the time we get to 7 o'clock in the morning, across some central southern parts of England, there could be some drier, brighter weather around. A bit cloudier further north across other parts of England and Wales. And in fact, across parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland, we're going to see another band of rain pushing its way in. This rain could be quite persistent, though not especially heavy. A little bit drier first thing across eastern parts of Scotland, perhaps northeast England, but this band affecting western Scotland and Northern Ireland is gradually going to make its way east and southeastwards as we go through the day. So more places over northern England, Wales, southwest England, perhaps turning damp again as we go through the afternoon. Elsewhere, there will be some drier weather around, cloudier towards the east, brighter skies towards the northwest with some showers mixed in, and temperatures still a little bit below average for the time of year, just about getting to the low 20s. On Thursday, there's going to be a bit of a north-south split. In the north, we can expect some blustery winds and some fairly frequent showers. Some of these could be on the heavy side. Further south, though, across many central southern parts of England and Wales, it's actually looking largely dry and lighter winds here too, with plenty of sunshine. By Friday, though, more of us are likely to see some wet and windy weather. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I am Johnny Ratner. Here's the latest. There are still long queues on the M18 heading south through South Yorkshire Junction 4 to 3. Of course, this is just south of Doncaster after a lorry was on fire just north of the A1M, although all restrictions have now been lifted. On the M42 in the West Midlands, still really slow, heading north up to the Solihull bypass, of course, Junction 5 after an earlier car broke down. Still queuing back to Junction 4, Shirley and Dorridge, halfway back to the M40. North London, the A10 just closed, just south of Dalston Junction. That's at the scene of an accident. And we're just hearing in Hertfordshire, the A505 at Royston is blocked. There are horses on the carriageway off the A10, off the Melbourne Road. On to London Underground, severe delays on the Jubilee line due to an earlier trespass incident at Camden Town, and delays of half an hour on trains from Kintbury to Castle Carey. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting.
I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
Good evening and welcome to Vote 2024 The People Decide with me, Camilla Tominey. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to be discussing the postal vote chaos. Why haven't people been receiving their ballot papers? We're also going to be talking about Labour's plan for opticians to help bring down NHS waiting lists. And, of course, with 48 hours to go before the polls close, we're going to have a latest on the polling with Professor Sir John Curtis. I'll also be joined by former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley as pop star Ed Sheeran lays into lawless London. Do get in touch tonight with your thoughts on the topics we're going to discuss by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Camilla, thank you and good evening to you. Well, the top story tonight is that the Royal Mail has hit back at claims there's been a failure to get postal votes sent out to some people, insisting there is no backlog ahead of Thursday's general election. It comes after the Post Office Minister himself, Kevin Hollinrake, was said to be urgently investigating claims of delays in some constituencies. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is refusing to rule out recounts if some postal votes can't be counted.
Well, look, we cross each bridge as we get to it. I am concerned about the delays, and I think what needs to happen now is everybody needs to pull together to make sure the ballot papers get where they're needed so that people exercise their democratic right to vote. So that's where my focus is at the moment.
Sir Keir Starmer. Meanwhile, the chairman of Reform UK, Richard Tice, has accused the Conservative Party of placing Trojan horse candidates in his party to spread lies. It comes after a second Reform candidate defected to the Tories, accusing some of her former colleagues of having racist, misogynistic and bigoted views. However, Georgie David said she did not believe Reform's senior leadership was racist. Reform say they disagree with Miss David's sweeping statement, saying she's never met the vast majority of their 600-plus candidates. The number of